I think as a photographer, it's really important to learn your craft, to practice all the time. But for me, I don't like to put a label on my shoulders of what kind of photographer I am. You become a landscape photographer, you have these rules of landscape. Wedding photographer, you're constantly aware that there's an ulterior motive driven within the images that you're creating. Sports photographer, it's exactly the same thing. So I really do feel that it's just about learning all these different techniques and using them whenever you need them. But I work really hard not to pinhole my own work as a certain kind of photographer or artist, and I just don't like to get bogged down with the labels, because at the end of the day it doesn't mean anything. It's about the work that you produce. No matter what I do, I'm a planner. I can't not do it. I plan, I research some more, I read. So interestingly, I did a shoot at the Manchester markets, and I literally did everything I could in my head to plan for this occasion, from permission slips from everybody who I felt owned the land, to stall holders, people who were walking the streets, had the equipment. I mean, I'd done everything. I'd walked the space, because that's a huge part of what I do. I like to walk everywhere. I like to feel the environment. And this walking practice helps you learn so much about where you are. And yet the day I went, I'd literally been set up 5 minutes and security came and asked me to leave. Because this one patch of land, which I hadn't thought about, was actually owned privately and we weren't allowed to photograph. So the whole thing had to be adapted very, very quickly. And you've not got to take it personally. Because with all best intentions of being prepared for your job, you can't be ready for everything. I'm influenced by a lot of people, famous, not famous, simply because of the amount I read, the amount I look at. I am fascinated by every aspect of photography, and I'm constantly striving to learn more all the time. And then sometimes it's just about how you feel about something. I think you have to accept that very quickly, and it's as you practice and you learn your own craft, you suddenly have a style, I think, that can change. I enjoy colour a lot. I do like colour. I like hope in my photographs. I want people to enjoy looking at them. I want conversation. I don't deliberately go out to upset people. So I think it's all part and parcel of how I look at the world, I think maybe. I enjoy a different perspective from places. You don't just have to take the most photographed area in a scene, especially with travel photography. I mean, we have so many vivid images of what something looks like that I think if you can find a new way of looking at it, then those stories can become a little bit more vivid to people and more memorable. There's also a part that I want people to feel the wonder that I did, because no matter how many times you go to places, I love the wonder of seeing it for the first time, and I think I want to reflect that in the work that I do, whether it's an ordinary or extraordinary place that I visit. I don't often film in black and white, but I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to work on a project called Women of the Waterways, which was all about the women from World War II who took over running the canals. And because of it, they kept industry running throughout the whole of Britain, because they would use these canal barges to transport heavy-duty steel, coal goods from the middle of the country, from the north of the country, all the way to London, so that during the Blitz, the world carried on turning, so to speak, and they went from housewives to industrious young women who had purpose and had real jobs. And I think these women got lost quite a bit after the Second World War, and it was really wonderful to find them again. So I decided to keep everything in black and white. I met Sebastian Salgado once, and he said that the reason he used black and white because he enjoyed the fact that it took away the chaos of colour, which I can understand really, because it pinpointed for him the important aspects of what we were looking at. So when I did this series of work, I really enjoyed practicing this, because again, it's not something that I do very often, so it was great to learn something new and fail miserably at times, but then other times things work quite nicely. I think what it portrayed mostly though was that a lot of work is all about the stories, it's about the people. I mean, I met some wonderful people on my own walks on the canal that you would never know had been part of a group who had saved a whole host of tourists when one of the barges sank on the Albert Docks in Liverpool. And they were telling this story, and yet you would never know these things happen. And I mean, that's so wonderful about photography. You meet people and you talk about their stories. The whole project ended with a day of sailing down the canal with a floating museum of archival images and stories, all from the Second World War, from these idle women, these women of the waterways. And that in itself was wonderful, because it was literally this motion and movement which connected people. I mean, people came aboard, they talked about the women and really learnt how to share those stories, and I loved it. I really enjoy new perspectives. I enjoy taking something that's familiar to everybody and just having a slightly different slant on something. Because we automatically have these ideas and recognise places, but we don't always see them through the same eyes, and that's what I enjoy with my photography, is going to familiar spaces and making them a little bit different. It creates questions, I enjoy the conversation. It doesn't have to mean anything, but it's just about that it gets people talking. I never want my photographs and my photography to be something that people walk by from and go, oh, that's not for me, you know. I don't want to be too clever for the image, and I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we can look so deeply into something that we forget the whole point of it is to show people in the world, and I think that's something you've really got to keep in mind. I love painting with light, I love the colours, I love simple techniques which don't need much editing. I don't believe in taking a photograph for a moment and then spending 2 hours for editing it. David Hockney was once asked what was his favourite camera, what was the best equipment, and he said the best camera is the one that sat right next to me, and I think that's really important. I think we get so bogged down in the technical details and the expense and the lens, and it excludes a lot of people, but also you're just not ready to take a photograph because you spent so much time carrying something around. So sometimes the best camera is literally the one you've got with you, and it's those moments of capturing them, because you never knew that was going to happen. And again, looking at something from a different perspective, I think it's really, really interesting. And it's interesting as well because you don't have to flood everything with so many images. You can just pick a couple, and I think the editing process is really important. You can take on a shoot 1,000 photographs, but sometimes there's only 4 that you want to tell the story with.